In this module, number 11, we are going to discuss developing use cases, taking our idea to a service based on a blockchain. First lecture is about business model for blockchain use case. We will begin with introducing the concepts of customer segments and value proposition, followed by other components of a business model. In this module, we'll begin with an introduction and then discuss concepts of business model. Then we will take a closer look at the customers whom the use case is intended for, the value proposition that the use case is offering to the customers, and how value is created from different perspectives. In this lecture, we are looking at principles to identify blockchain application customers, product development principles using blockchain applications. And the skills relate to analyzing the customer profile, debate different ways to innovate, and map the value proposition of a blockchain use case. We also have the skill of transfer existing concepts of blockchain use cases to new contexts. Responsibility and autonomy in this regard means being capable to explain potential product and services customer, including their goals, challenges, and aspirations. To cooperate with diverse teams to achieve goals of blockchain use cases, and share and communicate knowledge about customers' needs, product specifics, process heuristics among the use case team members. For this specific lecture, the learning objectives are about customer segments, value proposition, and blockchain use case. For customer segment, it is to elicit jobs, pains, and gains that a blockchain use case might address. In regards to the value proposition, it is to learn to identify and elaborate on how blockchain use cases can deliver value. And finally, learning objective related to blockchain use case is to learn to derive a value proposition canvas for blockchain use cases. A business model is a conceptual framework for how you can make a blockchain use case work. It is not enough with just having a piece of technology or having an idea. For the use case to work, several aspects needs to be included. For instance, the value proposition is the product or the service that the use case offers. And the customer segment are those who are going to use this. Channels refers to how this value proposition is delivered to the customer. And during this process that the customer is using the product, there will be need for some kind of communication. That is the customer relationship. Of course, to enable all of this, we need resources, activities, and oftentimes partners. However, in a business model, we do not list all resources, all activities, or all partners. We focus on the most important resources activities and partners. And therefore, we use the term key resources, key activities, key partners. All of this, of course, will incur costs, and to finance all of these operations, the use case needs to generate some form of revenues. Core to this business model is the value proposition and its relationship to the customer segment. This is so important that we would put the value proposition and connect it with the customer segment and call it value proposition canvas. Customer segments defines the different groups of people or organizations that your enterprise, that your use case aims to reach and serve. Value proposition, on the other hand, is a description of the benefits you offer, the benefits customer can expect from your product and service, the benefit for which customers are willing to pay. The customer segment is absolutely crucial. The reason is simple. If you build a blockchain use case that the customer does not need or do not perceive to be useful, or in no way helps the customer, then it is likely it will fail, because it's not solving any problems that the customer have. Even if it looks nice, if it doesn't solve a problem the customer has, the likelihood of the customer not being willing to pay is quite high. And if the customer doesn't want to pay for the benefit of the use case, then this use case is not sustainable. To understand the customer segment, we first have to define a customer segment, and then for that customer segment, we look into customer jobs, pains, and gains. In order to understand the person that we're trying to serve, we can use something called customer persona or a user persona. A user persona is a fictional customer we've made up that is very close to our actual customers we will have. Imagine that we take the thousands of customers we have and we look at what are their similarities, and we find a cluster that are very similar. They are very similar in their needs and their pains and what they're trying to achieve and why they would need the value proposition of your blockchain use case. We put that together as one user persona or customer persona. And this one person represents a larger number of customers that are very similar. We want to give this person a name. We want to make this person, this user persona, as real as possible. So we put a picture, we put a name, we say where he or she lives, we talk about what this person's needs are, what they're trying to achieve, what lifestyles they have, any information that makes it easier for us to know and to remember who we are delivering value for. Once we have the user persona, we go into more detail about their jobs, pains, and gains. Usually, we have more than one user persona. Maybe 2, maybe 3, but we should not have more than 4 or 5 because it becomes too complex to deal with 4 or 5 user personas concurrently with our product. So let us now assume that we have a user persona, like this lady who wants to transfer money in a simple and cheap way. We then explore what are the customer jobs they are doing. Customer jobs describes the things that the customer is trying to get done in their work or life. Bear in mind that right now we are not concerned with our value proposition. We are focusing on the job the customer has. These jobs could be functional, social, or personal, emotional jobs. A functional job is a job that the customer needs to execute, such as cleaning the apartment, cooking food, taking items from point A to point B, to study. These are jobs that the customer simply is trying to get done in their life. Social jobs is about jobs that customers do in order to be perceived by others in a certain way. It could be the way they dress, the places they visit, the type of restaurants they go to. The point of a social job is how they are perceived by others. Personal and emotional jobs is when a customer wants to achieve a certain state, such as happy or so. These jobs are, for example, when customer visits a museum to get an artistic feeling, or when they go to the movies to be entertained. So the customer has specific jobs they are trying to get done, regardless of the products that are out there. If you think about it, cleaning has been a job that has existed far before blockchain or other technologies were introduced. Likewise, cooking food. At the same time, we should bear in mind that not all jobs are equally important. Some jobs we have to do, but they are insignificant. Ideally, our use case will target a customer job that is important. The next aspect is to consider customer pains. Customers want to get their job done. Anything that annoys your customers before, during, or after trying to get a job done, or simply prevents them from getting the job done, is a pain. I need to clean. I don't like cleaning. That's a pain. I don't have time to clean. That's a pain. The equipment is difficult to work with. That's a pain. I clean, but it doesn't get clean. That's a pain. Anything that annoys, frustrates, causes problems for the customers before, during, and after getting the job done is simply a pain. And now we start seeing where the use cases might have value. Some customer jobs are necessary but costly. So value could be enabling the customer do that job cheaper. For instance, our customer persona wants to transfer money and when they go to banks, it's expensive. The banks charge maybe 1 or 2% of the amount just to transfer it. That's a pain. Or it is inconvenient in that you have to go to the branch, or the web page of the bank is very user unfriendly. These are our pains of the frustration I feel, the cost I have to pay for transferring money, and the time consuming because I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. Customer gains, on the other hand, is the flip side of the pain, which means that it describes the outcomes and the benefits that the customer wants to have achieved. So, when the customer wants to send money, a pain is not being sure if the money has been sent. In that regard, gain is that they feel secure that the money has been transferred and receive the confirmation that everything is okay. Now, gains can be required, which means that for a certain product, customers always expect that gain to be there. It could be a gain that they expect, meaning that the more of it, the better. There could also be gains that are desired, or the best is when there is a gain the customer gets that was unexpected, so they are pleasantly surprised. Again, gains can be of very essential to nice to have. Customer gain can be that it saves them money, that it reduces their costs of doing something, it reduces the risk, it improves the performance, the security or the quality, it's simple and easy, or it's engaging and fun. It improves the learning curve, it's educational, or the gain can also be that the design is so intuitive and appealing. So for a customer, we see that they have a certain job, and when they're doing that job, they have some pains, and they expect or wish to get some gains while doing it. If the blockchain use case helps conducting a customer job that is of significant proportion, or it's important for the customer, in a way that it reduces the pain and increases the gain, then we have a demand for the product. Then there is a need for this service. Why it's so important to understand the customer profile and the customer segment is that if you don't know about these things, you can create a product or a service that you think is valuable, but no customer feels it's valuable, or not enough customers have that need to generate enough revenues. The next step then is to look at the value proposition. The value proposition is basically what you are offering to the customer. And you start seeing that if the value proposition matches the customer segment, then the likelihood of success improves. If the value proposition offers something that does not solve a problem, it does not help the customer getting a job done, it does not help them to reduce the pain in getting the job done, and it does not give them the gain, the customer doesn't have a reason to pay for this service. The same is if you have a value proposition that does address the customer jobs, pains, and gains, but the customer segment is too small. So value proposition is a list of, so the value proposition has 3 components. First one being about products and services. This is nothing more than a list of what you offer. Search functionality, execution of a transaction, and whatever it might be. Again, some features you have are going to be essential, whereas others are more nice to have features. But this package, the list of what you offer, should kill the pain of the customer. It should relieve the pain of the customer. And this part of the value proposition describes how your products and service alleviate, reduce, diminish a specific customer pain. At the same time, your value proposition will have components that deliver gains. And in this part, you describe how your product or service for your blockchain use case creates gains for the customer. How can value be produced? If we look at more qualitative aspects, we see that newness, price, cost reduction, risk reduction are ways by which we produce value for the customer. In a more quantitative aspect, performance, meaning that it does the job quicker. Instead of 2 days, it's 2 minutes. Price, meaning that it's cheaper. And cost reduction, in that it does help the customer to reduce the cost, is how you create value. So let's put this together as one example. Let's take the money transfer example. What the customer wants to do is to transfer money from one account to another, somebody else's account, maybe even cross-border. This job has existed for more than 100 years. Initially, it was through telegraphs. Then, when banks started to grow in structure and regulation, international payment rails were created called SWIFT, and you could then transfer money through SWIFT. It was safer than manual transfer of money. It was quicker. It was more convenient. Then, with the internet age, you could do it through your internet bank. And you can now also do it through your mobile. But when you look at the customer job, it has not changed. The customer still wants to transfer funds from one account to another. And the pains have always been traditionally that it's slow, consider when they were doing it manually. It cost a lot when you did it in banks, for example. And it was risky. In the old days, the money transfer could be robbed, it could disappear, you didn't know where it were. And this is all pains. These are frustrations, concerns, annoyance that is created for the customer when they're trying to get the job done. And of course, for a customer, when this is done, or during or after this is done, if they can get a feeling that a transaction is safe, that you have tracking, and it's easy to do, it's convenient, you don't need to go to the physical place of a bank, but you can do it online or you can do it on your phone, then it's convenient. If you create a money transfer solution that does not help the customer transfer money from one to another account, in a way that reduces the pain compared to what they have and create the gains, it's not going to be adopted. Now, if we take the same example with the value proposition perspective, products and service component of the value proposition is the list of things you can do, such as transfer, log in and transfer, and set if it's express payment or not, and these things. The pain relievers is the performance, the cost reduction, the convenience, and the risk reduction. And you create gain by assuring the customer that it's safe, you give confirmation, and they can also track the money. Now, for a blockchain, this is the next level of technology to do these tasks. But you'll see that the customer job has not changed, but your value proposition of this blockchain use case comes from using technology to provide more gain and less pain, such as safe, traceable, and lower cost. And the value proposition then has to match the customer segment. And we always want to begin with the customer segment, because regardless of the use case existing or not, the customer segment will be there, the customer job will be there. We do not want to begin with the value proposition, because then we run the risk of creating the customer segment that we think needs this value proposition. And that's a good recipe for failure. Rather, we want to begin with the customer segment and then figure out how we can deliver value for those customers. Value proposition and customer segment constitute these two building blocks of this business model canvas. But having customers out there that has a job that I can solve, and me having a value proposition is not enough. The value proposition needs to be delivered to the customer segment. That is channels. Channels is about the customer being aware of you existing, of this use case existing. The customer then, once they are aware and see that this could potentially help them do a customer job, wants to evaluate to see if this is really the case by trying it out maybe, or just examining the offer and see if it has a fit with what they're trying to achieve. And if the evaluation is successful, the customer will purchase the service, will buy it, and then it has to be delivered to the customer. And maybe there is a need for support because something didn't work, and so forth and so on. So the channel is about how do you get your value proposition of your blockchain use case to the customer. It begins by making them aware that you exist, and then enabling them to evaluate your product, helping them in that process, and them then buying, purchasing your product, and then you have to deliver it and then support some kind of after sales. When we come to the after sales, there needs to be a relationship between the customer and the value proposition, or the company offering this value proposition. Imagine the context of transferring money and the money doesn't arrive. Then the customer wants to talk to somebody to figure out where the money is, what happened to it, and how it can be found again. For that, there are different ways by which a use case can set up how the customer relationship happens. If we put the different types of customer relationship on a continuum, we can begin from the very basic one, which is a transactional relationship, which means that there is no human involved. This is just the customer doing something on a machine. A bit more advanced than that would be self-service, where customer has to figure out themselves through, for example, frequently asked question parts of the web page, or a database where they can search for a certain problem and find an article or a text or a video that describes how they can solve it. Some have chosen to create communities where other users help customers in need. Oftentimes, the company also has one or two persons monitoring and reading, and when needed, commenting on how they can solve their problems. Up to now, there is actually no direct interaction between the customer and anybody at the company. But personal assistance is when the customer can actually reach out and communicate with a human being at the company. It could be through email, through phone calls, through a chat functionality, or visiting an office. A bit more advanced than that is a dedicated personal assistance, which means that you have a person that is dedicated to take care of you as a customer. And finally, you have solutions such as key account managers that are really long-term. So for channels, for the blockchain use case you're working on, you have to think about how will you make the customer aware? How are you going to help them evaluate, buy? And how are you going to deliver this product of yours to the customer? And when it comes to the after sales, you have to think, how are you going to support the customer after they have purchased, or in some cases, maybe even before? Bear in mind that your solution needs to be scalable. Having a dedicated personal assistant is not scalable, because as the number of customers grow, you need more people, and that's going to incur lots of costs for you. It does not scale up. So for your blockchain use case, think of how you will have a relationship with the customer. The more digital, the more driven by technology or digitalization, the more scalable it probably is. Now we've talked about value proposition, channels, customer relationships, and customer segments. These are the components of the business model canvas that are customer facing, or the customer sees or interacts with. In order to enable these 4 building blocks of the business model canvas, we need some building blocks inside the company to achieve this. These are key resources, key activities, and key partners. Key resources, and note the emphasis on the word key, meaning not all resources, but key resources, are those resources that are necessary for your business model to work, for your value proposition, for your channel, and for your customer relationship to work. If your customer relationship is very heavily dependent on a human interaction, then your key resource is going to be human. If your solution relies on proprietary products, you have intellectual property, then that is going to be a key resource for making your business model work. If your business case, if your use case requires physical products like a production, then physical resources are your key resources. In blockchain and blockchain use cases, we don't have physical. We might have intellectual property, but we probably have human resources being key, thinking of developers that are both a shortage and whose expert knowledge about the solution and their capacity to build new innovative features are going to be very important for making the business model work. Key activities, on the other hand, are the things the company has to focus on doing to make the business model work. Key activities describes the most important tasks and activities that is needed for making the blockchain use case work. Could be production, problem solving, and platform management. Production is a key activity of companies that produce physical products, such as cars, phones, and anything like that. Problem solving commonly is the key activity of industries where the need of human is high, such as consultancy firms, such as research and development departments of drug companies. And when it comes to digital and blockchain use cases, chances are that the key activity is platform management. If you think of Amazon, they have to maintain their platform. In addition, Amazon also has production. But eBay, for example, Uber, their key activity is platform management, which means they have to maintain the platform so it's stable and it works. They have to update the platform to improve it. They have to manage the feedback they get, and they need to promote the platform, because if you have, for instance, a platform such as Uber, you need both drivers and those who want to take a ride. Otherwise, it will not make it. Key partners is about the network of suppliers and partners you need to make your business model work, to make your business case work, to make your use case work. Traditionally, if you do everything yourself, it's going to cost you more and it's going to take longer time. Therefore, it is wise to have a third party or a partner do the work that you couldn't do as well as they can, and you focus on what you have to do. For instance, if you look at the case of Dropbox, their concept of syncing your files with the cloud was very innovative, and they were among the first ones to do so. However, the whole data is not put on their own servers, but rather on a provider such as Amazon. For Dropbox to build up the whole server infrastructure, it would cost them a lot, and that would distract them, take resources from their actual product. So they partner up and have that server infrastructure bought from another partner so they can focus on there. So in your blockchain use case, what are the things that you can have somebody else do that they can do better than you, so you can focus on your specific use case and specifically on how you deliver value for your customers? All of these building blocks, all of these aspects have of course, costs. And there you can choose in your use case to be either cost-driven or value-driven. If you're cost-driven, you try to reduce the cost as much as you can. If you are value-driven, you focus more on the value to deliver rather than the cost of that value. In a cost-driven business model pattern, you are trying to reduce every cost to the minimum, so you can perhaps offer your product cheaper than others. But if you are value-driven, the value you deliver is going to be of more important, and you will charge more for it as well. Typically, solutions that are cost-driven compete in the market with lower prices, and value-driven, they are competing on the market with better experience, higher quality. Think of a hotel. If it's cost-driven, it's cheaper, but if it's value-driven, it's more expensive, but the value you get, the perceived value you get, is higher. In your blockchain use case, think of which direction you want to go. All of these activities are only sustainable if you have income, if you have revenue streaming into the company. While many use cases are funded by capital from VCs in the beginning, the idea is always to create a model that is self-sufficient. To get revenue, you have to have a value proposition that the customer actually desires and are willing to pay for. There are different types of revenue streams. One is asset sale. In such a case, you sell something to the customer, and the asset sale is characterized by a shift, a change of ownership, meaning that when it's sold, it belongs and it's owned by the customer. Usage fee is based on how much they use. For instance, if you go to a hotel, you pay based on how many nights you want to use the room. Subscription fee, which is a very popular form and it's gaining popularity, is when you pay a certain amount regularly to have the right to use a certain service or even a product. If, for example, if you are in a gym, you pay a gym subscription, you pay a fee for access to the gym. If you're listening to music with Spotify, you're paying a fee to access the music. It is independent of how much you actually go to the gym or how many minutes of music you're listening to. You get free access, you get access, but how much is a different story. That's the distinction with usage fee and a subscription fee. Brokerage fee, on the other hand, is the fee that is taken for enabling you to use the service. And of course, the more you use, the more you pay. And finally, another way of generating revenue streams is to enable advertisement, where you allow somebody to advertise, to promote their product in exchange for a fee. They pay you to advertise on your use case towards the customer. Now let's put all of these things together in our example of money transfer using blockchain. So, who are the customer segments? Maybe it's not the most common people, but it are people that are a bit more tech savvy, who have maybe in a consultancy firm that they do some programming or this service selling to other countries, or that they have a wide international friendship, or for any reason they need to transfer money cross-border. This is your customer segment. Their job they're trying to do is to transfer funds. The pain they have is the cost, the time it takes, and the being unsure if the money reached and so on. Specifically, if the amounts are a bit higher, then it's even more important for them to feel safe that the money comes to its destination. The value proposition is to use blockchain technology to provide cheap, fast, and secure money transfer anywhere in the world. The package here might include a mobile, a solution where you can search for currencies, you can transfer funds to this account with your credit card or your debit card, or direct transfer from your bank. You can store different amounts in different currencies on this account. The way this value proposition relieves pain for the customer is by providing it cheap and fast and secure. And in so doing, you create the gain for the customer in that they feel secured, that they feel that they save money. More of the money is ending up in the pocket of the intended person. And maybe you providing full transparency and tracking and confirmations is a gain for the customer in that they feel in control of where their money is. The way you deliver this value proposition to your customer is through a mobile app. That's the channel. Of course, you still need to do some marketing, advertisement, and so on to make the customer aware. Maybe that is done through targeted ads in channels or in spaces that the tech-savvy people often visit. Once the customer has downloaded and is using your app, and if some problems arise, they can either do self-service, meaning that them being tech-savvy, they can find the answer to their question, or if it's a question related to where the money has gone, for instance, which cannot be tracked through an FAQ site, they have the opportunity or the possibility to chat with a human being through a mobile chat. That's how the customer relationship is maintained. For these aspects, there are a couple of key resources. Predominantly, it's a blockchain-based solution, so the network effect, the network, the algorithm, the actual code is the key resource. And this is essentially a platform that enables somebody to transfer funds from one place to another in a cheap, fast, and secure way. Therefore, the key activity here is going to be platform management, including the promotion of the platform so customers become aware, the further development of the platform so to solve more problems, and to solve the existing problems better. And it's going to be to maintain the platform, to make sure that money can be safely and fast transferred from one place to another. key partner here might be a provider that enables you to connect with your use case to customers' bank accounts. You might not have the whole structure for issuing credit cards, debit cards, for maintaining accounts. So therefore, you buy this service from a third party and they become your key partner. They offer you banking as a service where you can use their infrastructure with your name on it, and they provide you with this service so you can focus on the network, your solution, your value proposition. If you did not partner up, you would have to build up all of that by yourself. It would have not been cost efficient, because after building all of that up, then you would have to come to your value proposition. But now with partnering up, you can go straight to your value proposition. Your cost structure is probably going to be more cost driven because you're aiming at providing this value, the value proposition, cheap. One of the arguments you have for why customers should choose you over banks is that you are cheaper. Therefore, the cost structure is more likely to be on the cost-driven side. Now, all of these things needs to be funded. They need to be paid for, and that's revenue streams. You might have chosen to generate revenues through brokerage fee, meaning that for every transaction that is enabled on your platform, you take a little percentage as fee. There are other options. If somebody is transferring money often, maybe you would wish to provide a subscription fee-based solution, where for a certain fee they get X amount of transactions per month, or unlimited transactions per month. You could also combine different fees, having both subscription for certain customers that are using your service more frequently, and a brokerage fee for those that use it very rarely or just on one or two occasions. In general, this now becomes the use case, the business model for your blockchain use case. The point being that just having an idea or just having a technical solution does not constitute enough for making the blockchain use case work. You need to consider all the aspects of the business model canvas to make your blockchain use case useful, to make it work. Just having a network does not help customers become aware of your product, download the app and use it. Just having everything but not the key partners will not enable your customer to actually transfer funds. And if you don't take care of your platform, you will quickly see people leaving in dissatisfaction. So for a blockchain use case to work, we need to consider these components of the business model.